You're watching Cat Roll Hunter, and today we're going to try to fill this LIghthouse Vista album with some Canadian pennies. So I got 20 rolls of pennies. They don't circulate in Canada. We're hoping for some nice and shiny, beautiful scents, some old scents. It's probably going to be helpful that I didn't pull these out of a bag of dirt. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel Cat Roll Hunter, and that's right, I got 20 rolls of custom wrapped pennies. I got these from the bank, and pennies don't circulate here in Canada anymore, so really what's happening is people are just taking the pennies they find around the house, cashing them in at the bank, and the bank typically would send these back to be destroyed. And I'm trying to save these from destruction and find some good scents in here. We've got our brand new LIghthouse Vista album, and in my last video, we had a bag, a full box worth of pennies, and they were all in terrible shape. There was dirt and debris in the bag. The pennies weren't great. We slotted a few. We got a 1946, and we got a few from the 50s and 60s. I think we can do better than probably all of these, particularly in the 60s. I'm hoping these rolls are going to have some goodies. So let's get in them and see what we can find. Well, right off the bat, roll number one is going to start with a US Ender. It's a zinc scent, a 1987. It's not outside the realm of possibility to find a whole roll of US pennies here in Canada, but that's not going to be the case. We've got some Canadians in here. We'll be checking for errors, varieties, anything that might be less common, but we're really only wanting to slot really nice scents into the album. So I think we're going to be pretty selective. And I just see an edge here that looks interesting, and I'm going to look and see. And I thought for a moment it might have been a Steely, a United States steel scent with the edge that just looked a little silvery, but that's not the case. It's a 1995. In that first roll, I've got a 1979 under the scope, and we've got ourselves a double 7-9. So it's got some dye deterioration doubling here at the base of the 7 and the base of the 9. Not in great condition, but that's a really cool variety to find. You can find these with doubling across all of the numbers, and sometimes it's really, really pronounced. So you always check your 1979s. Just at the back of that roll, we've got our first laureate portrait find. It's a 1962, and there she is right there. So that's good. That might fill a spot. We want to find them in really great condition, which we can occasionally. So one roll in, these coins are a lot nicer looking than we got in the bag there, but just to get a bit of a sense, there's our Canadian copper. We've got a smaller amount of zinc and steel scents. We did get a bunch of US in there. Those are all the zinc ones. And we did find some nicer ones here that might be upgrades. I'm being far more selective here about these ones. There's one in the 70s that has a bit of luster, and we've got something in the 60s, and a few copper scents from the US as well. So a much better start than our last bag. Second roll, and we're going to have a surefire addition or upgrade to that album because we've got a laureate portrait that's still got a lot of red on it, and we got to flip it over to see what year it is. No surprise, it's a 1964, so that is going to be a nicer one for the album. Absolutely, look at that. Same roll in 1961, that's another laureate portrait, but it's got some corrosion damage on it, so not likely one for the album, but that's a copper scent we can add to our copper cup. Our first American scent from the 50s, it's a 1959 Denver, so that's a first-year Lincoln Memorial. Roll number 3, and there is a pretty nice-looking 1980. I think that one is destined for the album. Same roll, we've got a 1971 S minted coin. So this is from San Francisco, and I don't find a lot of San Francisco coins in my area, so those are always interesting for me to find. It's just unusual. Lots of Philadelphias, lots of Denvers, but it's not rare. This is minted at over 500 million. But not nearly as many as the P and D coins, which would have been minted in over 1 billion at least. Same roll, I've got a 1965 under the scope, and we want to check for one of the 4 varieties. The 2 most interesting are the 1965 pointed 5. This is the blunt 5, so the end of this 5, it's on a little bit of an angle, but it's not nearly as acute as the pointed 5 would be. That's the one we're looking for. And then there's one with small beads on the obverse and one with large beads on the obverse. Those are the 2 varieties we're really looking for. And here's another one. 20 years later, they were still making variations with those 5s. This is the blunt 5 1985. It's pretty much straight up and down. We want the pointed 5. It's a rare one. I found a couple before, so they're out there and you can find them. So keep your eyes open for the pointed 5. Roll 4, another laureate portrait. Let's see what we got here. Roll number 6, and we're going to get an oldie. This one is one for the album for sure. It's a 1946. It is our first King George VI of the hunt. Pretty dirty, but it is a oldie and a great addition to the album. Roll number 7, there's another 1964 laureate portrait for the board. Roll number 8 is going to give us our 5th laureate portrait. Let's see what we got this time. Oh, and I'm throwing them all over the place. And this one's going to be from the 50s, a 1956. That's awesome. Our oldest laureate portrait so far. Same roll, and it looks like we've got a pretty nice looking older scent. We're going to see this looks like one for the album. It is a gorgeous 1975. That is the best we've found in the 70s, absolutely. Okay, well, we're 10 rolls down halfway through that hunt, and we're doing much better than we did last time. I've been able to set aside some really nice, bright and shiny coins, particularly from the more recent years. And I've held back a bunch of them because remember, we need to find one that's magnetic and one that's not magnetic for most of the recent years. And I'm not checking them, except of course the ones that have some varieties. The 2003s, 2006s, the 2007 and 2010 are the less likely to have one or the other. So I'm checking those, but the rest I'm just piling up. And we found some good ones in the 90s that have a lot of luster, and even some in the 80s. And for the 70s, I think what we want to find is something that still has some red to it to put in the album. So we're being far more discerning than I was last time. And you can see there's a 1970 that doesn't have any red to it. We probably won't put that in the album, but we're doing much better. And we found a few older ones, including a King George VI. So you never know what's in these rolls, but so far so good. And we've got lots of copper compared to the zinc and steel. So we're doing really well so far. Let's keep on going. Roll 13, and we found what looks to be a very nice 1979. A little bit of dark toning, very interesting, but in excellent condition. That is probably going to go on the album. Same roll, that's our second 1964 and our 5th overall laureate portrait for the hunt. Roll number 14, check it out. We've got a laureate portrait, Elizabeth II, Queen by the Grace of God. We'll see what that is. Okay, hold on a second. That's a 1963. Look at this stunner right here. A little bit of a spot on it. It's another 63. It is phenomenal. Little bit of spotting on it there, but it is just bright and shiny. Almost a proof-like with a bit of a cameo finish. That is wicked. With a little bit of environmental damage. That is going in the album, absolutely. There's a quick look at our board with our potential finds, and you can see they're in really much better condition than what we were finding in that bag of dirty coins. But I bring you in because right here in roll number 16, we've got another laureate portrait, and we're going to flip it over, and it's another 64. Roll number 7, we got another nice one from the 70s. We haven't found a good 1970 until right now, and it's got lots of luster. I'll flip it over, and we can see that it's in pretty nice condition. So that's a great find right there. Awesome. Same roll, and we're going to find an older American. We got a wheat penny. This is awesome. Let's check it out and see what this one is. It's a 1944. Pretty common, but that's awesome to find an older American scent in here. Still in the same roll, here's another laureate portrait. This time it's a 1961. We found a couple of 61s already, so we'll be able to pick the best one for the album if we don't already have that spot filled. Roll number 19, we're going to get another one from the 50s. This time it's a 1955. Not one we've found so far in this hunt. Got some interesting marks on it, environmental damage. But our second 50s find. So we're in roll number 20 of our 20 roll hunt, the very last roll, and we are not done with really great finds because check out what just came to the party about 4 or 5 coins in. This is a first year King George VI, a 1937, and it looks to be in pretty good shape. It's brown, obviously. But I had some environmental damage, but there's a lot of detail in that hair. Let's take a closer look on the scope and just see what we're dealing with here. Wow, incredible. 1937, but we'll flip it over and we'll see that detail. So there's definitely some kind of toning going on, but this is much better than the average circulated 1937. We can see lots of detail in the hair. That's the high point of the coin. Right here. This is where we would normally see all this detail just go on the eyebrow and around the eye. That's actually pretty incredible. We got a 37 to add to the album. That is an awesome start. A little further back, we've got a laureate portrait. Could it be an older one? No, it's just going to be the most common 1964. And just a few coins back, here's another one. What do we got this time? Again, it's a 64. Okay, 20 rolls hunted, and we found lots of potential finds for the album here. This is going to be a really great start. We had a bit of a false start in our last hunt with some really dirty coins, but we got lots of good stuff I think we can slot in the album. And some older stuff that we've got over here, including that 37 and that 1946. So that's awesome. We did really well with copper. We got almost 2 full cups of copper. We got 1 full cup of Canadian zinc and steel cents. We're going to have more, of course, for that cup when we go through all of the finds, which is what I'm going to do right now, and look and see the best finds for the album. We'll slot those in, and I'll come back and we'll take a peek and see where we are. So I've gone through the finds and I've added some things to our LIghthouse Vista penny album. We'll take a look at this in a second. We did get a fair amount of copper, almost 2 full cups here, and we got almost a full roll's worth of US copper. So it looks like we might have gotten 49 US pennies. Speaking of US pennies, we actually, well, I guess we did get more than a full roll because we got a 1944 Wheatie. And we also got a first year Lincoln Memorial 1959 Denver. And then we got this 1971 S San Francisco minted coin. I just don't find very many of those. So I pulled that one aside. And we did get a bunch of laureate portrait. We got 11 laureate portrait in the 60s. We got 2 in the 50s, I think. And we got a couple of King George VI, and we were only able to slot one of them because we already had one in the album. So let's take a peek at the album and see what we've got. Going to open it up here, and we've filled so far 57 of 131 spots. So we did really well today. We only had maybe 5 or 6 that we'd actually put in. Probably the best find in the album is this first year King George VI, 1937. That one is in pretty good condition. It's brown for sure, but it has a lot of great detail. We already had the 1946, so we just left the one that was slotted in there. It was a little bit better than what we found today. I've added some stickers, some notations on this album because this album, unfortunately, doesn't account for a lot of the varieties that we can actually find that we're going to be looking for, and we'll want to put them in the album. So there was 1 slot here for the 1947 Maple Leaf, but there's a blunt 7 and a pointed 7 variety. We didn't get either of those, but we've got a spot for it. And I've added spaces at the back of the album for other ones that don't have a spot in here. Similarly, the 1948, there is an A to large denticle, an A to small denticle, and an A pointing between denticle. So there are different varieties, and we only had 1 spot, so we've added that spot here. Flipping over to the second page, we had some of these ones in the 60s already slotted, but we did make some improvements. Again, I've added some spots here. There's another variation of the 1949 we could find. So this one will be for the A between denticles, and the A pointing to a denticle is going to be in the back. The 1955, there is in the shoulder fold variety, the small denticle and the large denticle. There's also a very scarce 1955 no shoulder fold. I put a space for it. You never know with coin roll hunting. It's not likely, but you won't find it if you're not looking for it. In the 60s, we got that beautiful 1963 there. So we've added that, and we had a pretty decent 64. We can probably improve on that 64 and some of these other ones. We got a decent 1967, but again, I think we can find this in uncirculated condition. So we'll just have a quick peek through here, some of the other coins we got. Flipping over to the next page, I tried to be a bit more judicious about putting coins in the album. I wanted ones that had some kind of red in the 70s and 80s. I didn't want just brown cents, and we found lots of examples of brown cents in the 70s. So these ones had a little bit of mint luster. Again, we'll want to improve these ones over time. 1983, we didn't find a near bead. I left the space here for the near bead, but we did find a far bead because there's 2 you can look for and find. They're both fairly common, but I added a spot for that. We got an 85 blunt 5, but not the pointed 5. That's the more rare one. I've found them before. We can probably find it again. And as we get into the late 90s and early 2000s, these coins are going to start looking pretty nice. We found a lot of really great examples. So this is the last page with labels. Again, you can see there's one here. It's got a bit of a mark. We can do better than that. But we did find some pretty decent examples. Now here is where the album really was missing a bunch of slots. In many of these years, there are steel and zinc variations of these pennies, and there's only one spot. And in some cases, there were different variations, like the 2006 no logo, no mint mark, magnetic steel cent. I've found one of those before. They were once thought to be incredibly scarce, about 222 minted, but collectors have found more than that in circulation. So it's unknown what the mintage is, but it's one we could find. It's still scarce, it's still very valuable, but we're going to be looking for that for sure. So I've added the variations of these later years on this page. There were actually just enough slots to put them in here. It's on the next page. I'll just move this out of the way. And I'll throw the page behind there. It just allows you to see a little bit more clearly what we have and what we don't have. So in any case, I've added spots for some of these other varieties on here. There's a high 9 1929. There are different varieties in the 40s we talked about already. In the 50s, there's a 1967 double die obverse on that commemorative Confederation coin. And this is a new variety that's only really been recognized recently. It's the 1978 high 8, and I've never looked for a high 8. I wasn't even aware of it until very recently. I have some rolls of better condition, AU, uncirculated-ish 1978s. I might do a video looking to see if we can find the high 8. It looks like it's going for about $10 in a circulated condition, so that would be interesting. The 1979 double date we had in the last hunt, it was better than the one we found today, so I've left it in here, but we'll continue to upgrade this. We'll want to find one that is in red condition, but also one where the doubling on the date is really significant. And then again, there's the far bead 1983 we found. And if we find anything I didn't label a slot for here, we've got some spots and I can add labels. So that is our, I think, unofficial start to our album fill for our small Canadian cents. This album goes from 1920 to 2012. We've got 57 of 131 spots now. It's going to be very difficult for us to get 1920 through 1936. Those are King George V, and I've never actually found a King George V in circulation. So we'll have our work cut out for us, but you know what? We're going to keep on. We're going to look for them. And if you're looking for something, you're bound to find it. So that's what we're hoping to do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Cateroll Hunter, please subscribe now so you're aware of all of my new videos. I have new content coming out regularly. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it and hope to see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.